In a stunning defeat for the Biden Justice Department, a jury has acquitted two men accused of conspiring to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer in the fall of 2020. The jury also deadlocked on a verdict for two other defendants, which meant a hung jury, a mistrial. So another way to put it is the DOJ, in one of the most high-profile terrorism cases, in which they put enormous resources, they could not convict a single defendant. Now, earlier, two other guys pleaded guilty. They succumbed to the sort of legal intimidation of the DOJ, and they took a reduced sentence for that. But I think when they look at these verdicts, they're probably going to be sorry that they didn't go to trial. Essentially, the defense mounted a case of entrapment. They said that the FBI, in a sense, made us do this. They came up with the idea. They moved the plot forward. It was their plot, not ours. They made us into terrorists that we wouldn't otherwise have been. Think about the stunning implications of this. And yet, the jury agreed. The jury found entrapment. The jury basically let these guys walk. The jury did not believe the FBI, and they did not believe the Biden DOJ in a case that, quite honestly, was being portrayed just a few months ago as kind of a slam dunk, a kind of a sure thing. Now, let's go back to October of 2020, because it's kind of fun to look at the way that you had these, blaring headlines in the New York Times, ABC News. Here's the New York Times. FBI says Michigan anti-government group plotted to kidnap Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Here's ABC News beginning its broadcast this way. Tonight, we take you into a hidden world, a place authorities say gave birth to a violent domestic terror plot in Michigan, foiled by the FBI. So this is the true deep state propaganda that our moronic and subservient journalists love to go with. And of course, Governor Whitmer was there with a press conference, blaming Trump. CNN, by the way, had a very interesting article in which they talked about the fact that the FBI had informants, but they pretended like the informants are sort of silent observers. They're just standing there making notes or taking mental notes of what's going on. I'm going to quote CNN. The Watchman, this is one of the groups, had been flagged to the FBI in March, and one of its members was now an informant. That informant, others on the inside, as well as undercover operatives and recordings, quote, allowed the Bureau to monitor what was happening from then on. So the Bureau isn't participating. They aren't driving the plot forward. They are merely monitoring it. So you have to look back and recognize the thorough mendacity of this entire operation. I mean, quite honestly, if you or I are called to be in a jury, we should at this point disbelieve anything that the Biden DOJ says, disbelieve anything that the FBI says, believe only things that are presented with irrefutable evidence, take nobody at their word, because they are proven prevaricators and liars. Now, what's so terrific about this case, Daniel Harris and Brandon Caserta were the two defendants who were found not guilty. Not guilty of terrorism, not guilty on charges of conspiring to use a weapon. The FBI, as usual, they hurl a bunch of different charges thinking if we don't get him on this, we'll kind of get him on that. And the whole trial was carefully constructed to be very favorable to the prosecution. In fact, in the beginning, the judge was not even going to allow the entrapment defense to come in except until the end. Then the defense lawyers prevailed on him and basically said, we can't make our case if we aren't able to appeal to and provide evidence for, counter evidence for FBI entrapment. So the judge finally said yes. But it's so telling, isn't it, that the Biden DOJ didn't want its own agents to testify. We're constantly trying to exclude evidence, communications among FBI agents, one to the other, communications between the FBI and the defendants. They want to keep all of this out of the trial. In other words, they want to keep the orchestration out so the jury doesn't hear about any of it. And the jury goes, well, yeah, I mean, these guys, they had some very, violent and turbulent anti-government rhetoric. And after all, they did participate in the plot without noticing, well, who put them up to it? Who are the wily deceivers that came to them with the idea? Well, the head of the operation here was this guy named Big Dan, a fellow named Dan Chappelle. And this is a guy, he even testified about how he's the one who brought this group together. He's the one who set up the kind of chat room in which they all exchanged ideas. He organized excursions for field training. He's the one who set up the surveillance of Whitmer's cottage. This is the FBI doing all this. And the FBI paid him handsomely. Over just a few months, they pay him $60,000 in cash. They give him all kinds of gifts, laptops and smart watches and this and that. Now, admittedly, the yahoos who are involved in this were these angry men who made some inflammatory and in some cases violent comments, but they were not in a position to carry out a plot. The assistant attorney, U.S. Attorney Niles Kessler, he tried to say that, listen, it's one thing to protest against the government, but what you can't do is kidnap them, kill them, or blow them up. It wasn't just talk. Well, it would have been just talk if it wasn't for the involvement of the FBI. And one of the defense attorneys summed it up beautifully when he said that this is conduct unacceptable in America. That's not how it works. We don't make terrorists so we can arrest them. And that's exactly what the FBI did in this case. The really good news, Harris and Caserta are now free. They're out. Fox and Croft, the other two guys, where there was a hung jury, they are still in custody. The government is to decide whether to retry them. But given what happened in the first trial, I think the government might very well be setting itself up for the exact same outcome.